what is this video all about? Let's have a preview. Do watch the video till end to get all the insights.
Hey, how are you doing? This video is for everyone who has no background and no knowledge in Java and programming. Today, we will be discussing about some of the basic fundamentals of programming and Java. So let's begin with what is a program and why is it needed? Technically speaking, a program is a set of instructions. So can we call any set of instructions as a program? No. Let's take an example. Suppose you are making a cup of tea. Now for making tea, you will add water, add tea leaves, add sugar, add milk, etc. So all these steps, if combined together, is a set of instructions. But just writing it down like this doesn't make it a program. So basically, we know the steps, but these steps are not understandable by the computer. So to make computer understand, we write these set of instructions as a program. So that is a syntax that computer can understand. So if you want to calculate sum of two numbers, then these will be the set of instructions and this will be the syntax of a program to make computer understand. Now, since computer only understands the language of programs, any instructions we give to the computer is basically telling computer to run a specific program. Here, as you can see, all these icons are basically a program on our computer. And by program, what I mean is an executable file. Click on any of these icons to open a tool or a software. Basically, you are telling the computer to run that program, that is the executable file, by providing the name of that program. If you click on Notepad, it will tell computer to run notepad.exe program by giving the name of program Notepad. Similarly, if you minimize, maximize, drag, drop, all these actions tell computer to run a program behind the scenes. But these actions are performed so fast that we don't even realize it. Now, when I say tells computer to run a program, technically it informs the OS, that is the operating system, to execute the program. Without OS, you cannot execute a program as it operates the system. There are multiple operating systems available like Windows, Unix, Linux, Mac, DOS, etc. But again, directly we cannot tell OS because OS doesn't understand our language. The language we use to communicate is English, and the language that computer understands is machine language. Now, how do we communicate? Using a programming language? Yes. We write a program using high-level languages like Java, C, C++, etc. This language is understandable by humans, not by computers. This piece of code we write is called the source code. Computer understands machine code, that is, data in binary format. Binary data is the one that contains only 0 and 1. Here, let's say we use Java programming language. But to write a program in Java also, we use English itself. And computer want data in 0 and 1. Here is where the need of compiler and interpreter comes to convert our source code into machine code. Consider it as a medium that converts our English language into computer understandable machine language. We will mainly be discussing about compilers, as Java uses a compiler. Now, compiler is also a program written by some technical people and distributed in the form of jar. In other words, Java archive file, so that everyone can use it. And compiler also differs according to the programming language. Every programming language has its own compiler. First, let's see how a compiler works, and then we will see how it differs from interpreter. So, the basic compilation process goes through 6 phases, as you can see here: lexical analysis, syntax analysis, semantic analysis, intermediate code generation, code optimizer, code generator. To understand how the data flows from these phases, we will take an example. Let's say x is equal to 20.3 and y is equal to x into 30. To explain you the compilation process, we will just look into the calculation of y value. So the first one is lexical analysis. In this phase, program is converted into a sequence of tokens. That is, it scans the source code left to right, character by character, and then group these characters into tokens. Now, what is token? Every small element in a program is considered as a token. In this example, x equal to y multiply 30, all these are tokens, where equal to and multiply are operators. X, y and 30 are identifiers. Identifiers are basically user-defined elements in a program which can be used to represent a variable or a function, etc. Okay, so we will discuss this topic in detail later, but for now you just understand that y, x and 30 are identified as tokens in the first phase, that is lexical analysis. Second is the syntax analysis. In this phase, a structure is constructed using series of tokens from previous scanner. This structure is known as parse tree. So here it will create a structure where operator is taken as parent node and identifiers are taken as child node. So starting from right hand side of the equation, we will create the tree. So the multiply is the parent node. It will have two child, that is the identifier 2 and 3, and equal to will have two child, identifier 1 and multiply. Basically, it determines whether or not a text follows the expected format. It checks if the expression is syntactically correct or not and then report all the syntax errors. Okay, so basically the syntax or the format of code is checked in this phase. Next is semantic analysis. In this phase, it ensures that the program has a well-defined meaning by checking the semantic consistency of the code. That is, it will check for the type mismatches, incompatible operands, improper arguments, or an undefined variable. All these things are verified here. Okay, so if you are not able to understand any of the terminology, don't worry about it. Just consider that it will check for any of the inconsistency in any of the data, okay, or incompatibility basically. All these will be checked. So in our example, since x and y are floating point numbers, that is decimal numbers, and 30 is an integer, so we have a type mismatch. Hence, it will convert 30 integer to float before performing any calculation. So that's why the parse tree will look similar as the syntax analysis, only integer to float is added here in the semantic analysis. Next is intermediate code generation. Intermediate code is between the high level and machine level language. It holds the values computed during the process of translation and helps you to translate the intermediate code into target language easily. So here it will take temporary variables t1, t2 to assign computed values and assign it back to the final result. So 30 is converted from integer to float and value is stored in t1. Then identifier 2, that is x, is multiplied with t1 and value is stored in t2. Finally, value of t2 is assigned to identifier 1, that is y. Next phase is code optimizer. In this phase, it will remove unnecessary code and arrange the sequence of statements to speed up the execution of your program. Basically, it performs functions like improving the running time of your target program, removing any unreachable code and getting rid of the unused variables, or removing statements which are not altered from the loop, etc. So all these things will be checked in this code optimizer phase. And so basically in our example, it will remove all the temporary variables that we have used previously and arrange the statement as id1 is equal to id2 into 30.0. Next phase is code generator phase. In this phase, it will allocate storage, that is memory locations and registers, and generate relocatable machine code. The code that is generated in the code generator phase is executed to take inputs and generate the expected output. To understand the example, first understand what is registers. Registers are nothing but a type of computer memory which is used to quickly accept, store and transfer data and instructions that are being used immediately by the CPU. Okay, so whenever any operations are performed by CPU and CPU wants to store data at that particular time, and that will not be used later, okay, so then it will use registers. In our example, 3 register operations are performed: LDF, MULF, STF, to load, multiply and store floating point data. First, it will load identifier 2, that is X, in register 1. Then it will multiply value in register 1 with floating point 30.0 and store it back to register 1. Then finally store the value in register 1 into identifier 1, that is Y. In this way, each and every small operation goes through all these phases while compilation and produce the result. So if you're not if you're not clear about this entire compilation process, don't worry about it. Like there are not much interview questions related to these phases of compilation. This is just for your understanding and to know how compilation works. So now let's see how it differs from interpreters. An interpreter is also a translator, just like a compiler, in that it takes a high level language, that is our source code, and converts it into machine code. However, it does something slightly different. It actually runs and executes the code that it translates immediately as it translates. In other words, it will translate a single line or section of code at a time. Once it has finished translating one line, it will take the machine code version of it and run it immediately. While what a compiler does is first translate the entire code and then execute. Due to this, interpreter displays error as it runs, while compiler displays all the errors after compilation is done all at once. Hence, the speed of execution of code is faster in compiler than interpreter. So in simple words, compiler will translate your entire code, entire piece of program, and then execute it, while interpreter will translate line by line, and each line, if there is any error, it will throw the error or it will execute that line. Okay, let's consider an example. I have just modified our old example. Here int x is equal to 20.2 and float y is equal to x into 30. What interpreter will do is, it will translate the first line and throw error, type mismatch or incompatible types, but compiler will translate both the lines and then throw the incompatible or type mismatch error. And if we had an example like int y equal to x into 30, then both these lines should throw error, the type mismatch error or the type incompatible error. So interpreter will translate line 1, throw error, translate line 2 and throw error. compiler will translate line 1 and 2 and then throw errors for both lines. This was just a small example to explain you the difference between interpreters and compiler. But in this example, you might not be able to see how it affects the performance and all. But if you consider huge data and large complex programs, this minute difference makes a large difference in performance and speed of execution. So I hope now the concept of compiler and interpreter is clear to you. Moving forward to compilation and execution in Java, let's see the flow diagram that I have already mentioned in my previous video while on Java and try to understand the flow here in detail. So first understand the terminologies that are present in this diagram. Source code, it is the one that we write using high-level languages like C, C++, Java. Then bytecode is the code which is present in the format of 0 and 1 but is not runnable code, meaning you cannot run the bytecode directly. Okay, and the third is JVM, that is Java Virtual Machine. Let's understand what JVM is, then we will come back to the flow of this program from compilation to execution. Now, Java has something called JDK, which is Java Development Kit. This kit contains some tools to develop and test Java programs. That is the reason why we need to download and install JDK first in order to compile and run Java programs. This process of how to install and set up JDK is already mentioned in one of my videos in detail. So you can check it out. I have provided the link in description. Now, what comes along with this JDK? We get a JRE, Java Runtime Environment, which provides resources and libraries to OS, operating system, to execute the program, and it also contains a JIT compiler and other development tools. JIT is just-in-time compiler which converts the bytecode into understandable instructions at runtime that can be sent to the processor directly for execution. In other words, JIT compiler will convert the bytecode into machine code. Machine code is also in binary format, 0 and 1, but it is runnable and can be directly executed by the CPU. Now inside JRE, we have JVM and some libraries. Java Virtual Machine, as the name suggests, is a virtual machine or an engine that calls the main method to run the Java application. So all these resources needed for Java execution, that is JVM, JRE, JIT compiler, all these come under a package called JDK. So when we install JDK, all these are set up on our system by default to make it ready to execute Java programs. Now let's move back to the flow of program. So now you know these terminologies. The source code .java file, as Java files have .java extension, goes to the compiler which converts it into bytecode, that is .class file. Now before I have told you compiler converts source code into machine code. Well, that's true. There I was talking about the bigger picture. But if you see the entire process, you will understand what happens while this translation. The compiler that converts source code into bytecode is the compiler present in your machine. The bytecode now we have is ready to be distributed and can run on any platform. So we can take this bytecode and run it on any OS. Here we have taken Windows and Mac OS for example. Now, as discussed, each OS has its own JVM. So with the help of JVM and JIT compiler, bytecode will be converted to machine code that is executed to produce the output. Next topic is class path and execution of Java program. As you can see, these are the commands used to compile and execute Java. program Java C eg.java, where eg is your class name or file name. In Java, your class name should match your file name, and Java EG is used to run the EG program. Let's create an example and understand. I will be using command prompt and notepad for now. We will switch to IDE later. In fact, I have already created a video on how to set up the Eclipse IDE and get started. You can check it out. If you're not comfortable using notepad and command prompt, then you can check that video and get it installed and set up your Eclipse IDE, and you can start using that IDE. So to begin with, press Windows plus R key on your laptop or your keyboard to open Run. Then type CMD and hit enter. Your command prompt will open. Let's create a hello world program first. So just type notepad hello world.java and hit enter. It will ask for your confirmation. Click on yes to create a file. Now just type the code as I do. I will explain it to you later. We are just going to print hello world on our command prompt. Make sure you have gone through the JDK install video and it is set up on your machine, else you won't be able to run these commands. Now type java c hello world.java, hit enter, and then java hello world and hit enter. So as you can see, it has printed hello world. Now to understand the concept of class path and command line arguments, let's create few more examples. Create a folder and inside the folder create a Java file sum.java. Write a sum function and call it from the main method. Just write as I do. And let's compile it. Okay, so a non-static method cannot be called from a static method. This is also a concept that we will discuss later. Now let's just fix it and compile again. Now execute it. Okay, Nothing printed as we are just returning the value, not printing it. Let's print it. Now as you can see, 25 is printed. Now write dir and hit enter to check the files in this folder. So we have two files, sum.java and sum.class file, where sum.class file is generated after compilation. Let's move a folder back by writing command cd dot dot. Now let's try to compile this sum.java file again. Basically we are trying to compile a Java file outside its folder. So as you can see, it throws this error, file not found, because file is not present in this folder. So we will have to provide the entire path along with the file name to compile it outside the folder. So in this way, write javac followed by path of file with its extension. But you cannot run it in the similar way by providing the file path like this. To run, you need to provide the class path, which will tell compiler where your classes and packages are located. So something like this, java hyphen class path space the path of your file followed by a semicolon dot and space and file name, and then hit enter. So here the class path is used to mention the path of your file, then the dot that we are using after semicolon is just to mention to the compiler that you are referring to the current folder, okay, or current package. So you see here again 25 is printed. This is where the class path comes in picture. When you want to execute a file outside its folder or from any other folder, you will need class path to tell the compiler which file you want to run and where is its class file located. You will need it especially when we create packages and all, that we will cover in coming sessions. For now, I hope you understand the need and use of class path. It is just used to execute a Java file outside its folder. Okay, and the class path basically is used to tell where your dot class files are present, because that is what it is going to use to execute the Java program. Now let's update our program to see what is command line arguments. Let's edit the hello world program and let's add a loop to print the command line arguments along with the hello world string. So now let's compile and execute it. While executing, provide some arguments. Okay, so now the loop I have used will print arguments in the reverse order. Okay, because I'm using the loop in that way. And don't worry about all this, the loop, how I'm using and how it works and all this, because all this will be covered in the coming sessions. You just focus on the command line arguments. Here each argument will be printed on a new line because we have used println function. So println function will print whatever string you give it, and it will move to the next line every time you call this function. So if you don't want to move to the next line every time you print it, so you can use print function instead of println function. Okay, and so let's switch it and execute it again. Now we don't have any space, so let's just add some space, and now let's compile and run it again. So here I'm switching between commands using the arrow keys, so you can use it. Okay, you can use the arrow keys to switch between your previous commands, whatever you have typed. So this is the final output. So this is how command line arguments work. So it is basically used to provide input from the command prompt to your program. So for now, I hope you understand what basically the concept of class path and command line arguments, why it is needed and how it is used. Okay. So next we have is entry point function. Now, as I have previously mentioned, execution of all the programs in Java is controlled by JVM, which calls the main method to get it started. So this main method is nothing but the entry point function. Here you can see the syntax of main function. It will be the same throughout. So just by heart it, okay? It is always going to be the same: public static void main string args. Let's discuss what all of this stands for. Public is the access of main method. It means this method can be called outside the class as well. Static is the nature of the main method. So it means this method can be called without creating object of the class. That is how static methods work. We will discuss this topic in detail later. For now, just understand that main method is called directly by the JVM. We don't create an object of its class to call this function. Void is the return type of main method. It means main method does not return anything. Other return types are integer, string, float, etc. Okay, so if you don't want to return anything, we use void as the return type. Now main is the method name. Since when we compile by writing Java C class name, JVM will search for the main method in that class whose access is public, nature is static, return type is void, and argument type is string array. So here string args is the string array that is passed as an argument to main function. If JVM is able to find main method, it will execute it, else it will throw an error. Here's an important note. Unlike C++, in Java, if a class doesn't possess main method, still the code will get compiled. And also if a number of Java classes contains main method, still the code will be compiled, because in Java the execution is done based on the main method of the class whose name is given to the JVM. That is, when we write Java C class name, whatever class name you give at that point of time, JVM will search for the main method in that class. Okay, so that is all about the entry point function. Now the last topic that we have for this session is why Java is called platform independent. Here, when I explained about the flow of data, basically the compilation process in Java, So the one thing that I mentioned was the bytecode generated after compilation is distributed and executed on different platforms, that is the different operating systems. So the bytecode is nothing but the compiled code. As written, Java is not platform independent. Java compiled code is platform independent. The compiled code, when placed on different operating systems, and when you try to execute that, the JVM present on that operating system will generate its machine code and run it on your machine or on your operating system. But that is not the case with C programming language. You cannot compile it on one machine and execute it on another machine. So this is one big advantage of using Java programming language. Due to this feature only, developers are able to generate some pre-compiled code for some specific operations, and then they upload it as a jar file so that it can be used, it can be downloaded by anyone and can be used by anyone on their machine. So in this similar way, as I've previously mentioned, that compiler is also a program. So in the similar way, the code for compiler was also written and it was distributed in the form of jar files that we basically download and use it. Okay, so yeah, so basically I've covered all the basic topics that are in Java. So from next session onwards, we will be discussing on specific topics that needs to be discussed in detail. So you can find the interview questions in the end of this video. I have already discussed its answers in the video itself. There's just one question that is left unanswered, so let me also cover that. That is why Java is not 100% object oriented. Now, I know that I have not covered the concept of objects in this video. We will be discussing that in the coming sessions, but just to answer this question, just remember this, that Java not just work on complex data types, that is objects, but it also works on primitive data types, and that is the only reason why it is said that it is not 100% object oriented. Okay, so even if you don't understand this line by now, just note it down and just remember this. I will explain it to you in the coming videos. That's it for this video. Write me down in the comment section if you have any questions or queries regarding the topic that we have discussed. I will get back to you. And if you want to stay updated with the next videos, do subscribe and hit the bell icon. Thank you so much. Have a great day.